What is the Chabad attitude of studying Daf Yomi?
The history of Daf Yomi goes back to the 30s, I think, late 20s, early 30s. The Daf Yomi was introduced by the Meir Shapiro, who the Rebbe himself identified as Gor Achsidish Yirid. The Rebbe said he knew him. He was a very, very Achsidish Yirid. In fact, the Rebbe said that he was surprised that Misnagdim adopted his takana, considering the fact that he was such a big chassid. He introduced it by one of the meetings of the Moetzes Gedolei HaTorah that they had in Europe. They had the Knessia Gedolei, I believe it was called, and he introduced the idea of Daf Yomi. When he introduced Daf Yomi, it was mixed reviews, as it were. A lot of people embraced it. They thought it was a great idea. And of course, the point of Daf Yomi was that everybody in the world would be learning the same Daf Gemara on the same day, so there'd be a certain cheshek and a certain chayes and a certain ability to share ideas. The people who opposed Daf Yomi on the grounds that it would result in learning shitchiistic, superficially. Because when you learn that quickly, you have no time to delve deeply. So the most outspoken opponents of Daf Yomi then were the Litvische, were the Misnagdim, the Eilamische. And today, of course, it's become very much a part of their culture to learn Daf Yomi, the Daf as they call it. But at that time, there was an understanding that a person is supposed to learn Torah more deeply. The previous Rebbe agreed with that perspective, and he used the expression "Alei Torah leprokim." When you divide up Torah in such a fixed way, where you divide it by kamos, you're missing out on something very, very, very deep. This was the issue at the time. After the war, the world changed radically. And as we see, in fact, many people who were part of the opponents of Daf Yomi became in favor of Daf Yomi. But the previous Rebbe never changed his position. He never came out and said, okay, now I'm doing Daf Yomi. That never happened. Over the years, there have been a number of Lubavitcher Hasidim who were involved in the limud of Daf Yomi, and they gave shiurim on Daf Yomi, and they would consult with the Rebbe. The Rebbe always supported what they were doing. He gave them brachas for their siyumim, but he also made it clear that the previous Rebbe was not in favor of it, did not support it. I remember one siche, it was Memches or Memtes, where one of the members of Knesset, Verdiger, was here for Shabbos, and that Shabbos the Rebbe spoke about the Daf Yomi, and part of what he said was that how did I make a takon of Limud Rambam if we were not in favor of Daf Yomi? And the Rebbe gave a number of explanations for why he introduced Limud Rambam, even though the Rebbe Rayatz, the Friedrich, was opposed to Daf Yomi. The Rebbe said, first of all, it's only a proposal. And then the Rebbe said also that he connected it to the inyan of Mashiach, that since you have to bring Mashiach, in order for Mashiach to come every year to complete the whole Kol HaTorah Kula B'Pardes, he therefore introduced the idea of Limud Rambam. So this is an overview of the history of the Rabbeim when it comes to Daf Yomi. This is a fact that at the time when Daf Yomi was introduced, the previous Rebbe was opposed to it, as were many other Gedolei Yisrael, particularly amongst the Eilamishe, amongst the non-Hasidim. And this opposition was never lifted, so to speak. So that's the answer to the question. But I am going to add something, which I think is very important. And if I suffer for it, so be it. But I believe it, and I think it's very important to be said. In plain English, if the choices are to learn Daf Yomi or not to learn at all, there's no doubt that a person should learn Daf Yomi. In other words, it's the old story with Baal Pa'ed. We become so religious about not learning Daf Yomi because the Rabbeim didn't approve of it, and we end up learning nothing, or learning very little. We have a Torah crisis in Lubavitch. We do. We have a Torah crisis in Lubavitch. Balabatim almost don't learn. Period. And if they learn a Maimah, they learn a Sicha. But the idea of learning Gemara, which the Alter Rebbe wanted that every single young man should make a Siyam Masech every year, is almost, it's tragic how many of Anash don't have a Shia to learn Gemara. And perhaps it's not ideal that a person should learn Daf Yomi because the previous Rebbe did not support it. But if the alternative is not learning Gemara at all, it's a no-brainer. Of course you must learn it. And the fact is, the Daf HaYomi speaks to the Nefesh HaBahamis. It speaks to the Yetzer Hara. It's very motivating. There's incredible motivation to learn Daf Yomi because everybody wants to finish Shas. It's an incredible experience to finish the Shas. I have a friend whose father is not a Shem Shabbos, not Echel Kosher. He saw on television to see him a Shas Daf Yomi. He calls up his son who's a Baal Tshuva and says, I want to learn Talmud also. And he joined a Shir. A non-frum man. How long do you think that man remained non-frum by sitting every day an hour and learning a Blat Gemara? So it's a little bit simplified when you simply say you can't learn Daf Yomi because the Rebbe was not in favor. Firstly, he never opposed it. There's no such thing. How can you oppose somebody's limud Torah? He felt that people should learn more deeply. We live in a time where there is such a drought in Torah. And if a person will find more motivation to learn by learning Daf Yomi, in other words, if in reality it's going to translate into learning more hours of Torah's Havaya and more pages of Gemara that the Eibishter gave us, I think to oppose that is foolish. It's like throwing away the baby with the bathwater. It's totally missing the point. Is there a madrege where a chassid could say that it's limited to the prakim and I should be learning Torah more? But of course. But look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. I have a friend of mine who has a shir in Daf Yomi, and he wrote about it on a Chabad site, and he got attacked, and I wrote a defense, and I was attacked. I think people have to appreciate not just, the old story with the chicken and the pupik and the noodle, when you go into a patient's room in the hospital, and it's beeping, indicating the person has no pulse. You say, oh, the person's dead, and then you find out that the little grip on his finger has been dislodged. So he's well alive, it's dislodged. For a person to completely forget the reality of the situation. And the reality of the situation is that we need more Torah in our community. People have to learn Gemara, absolutely learn Gemara. It's not enough to learn a Maimon Chassidus, it's not enough to learn L'Sicha, you have to learn Gemara. And really you should learn Gemara every day if you're able to. And if you're joining a shir, will motivate you, and I'm speaking absolutely to the Nefesh Abahamis, it's such a wonderful thing, and I'm going to encourage it, and I know that people are not going to like it, but this is my opinion, and I'm going to say it, and I think it's based on common sense, and it's what the Rebbe would say. And I believe the Rebbe says it. I'll tell you a great story to illustrate this. A younger man went on vacation to Florida, which meant that he's a very big tzaddik, because he went on vacation to Florida with all the tzaddikim. And he walked into the yeshiva in Miami Beach, 8 o'clock in the morning on Shabbos. And he sees a bacher going over to the Rosh Yeshiva, and discussing with him a Gemara. And they didn't just discuss it for a minute, it became a huge, passionate, involved discussion. So this holy roller wrote a letter to the Rebbe about going into a Lubavitch yeshiva, and God forbid, Shabbos morning, 8 o'clock, instead of learning Chassidus, they're not only learning Gemara, they're learning Gemara with such great enthusiasm. So he wrote it into the Rebbe as a critique. And the answer he got from the Rebbe was, thank you very much for the good news, and I wish in the future you should give me similar news. But the Rebbe doesn't know that Chassidim learn, he can limud on Shabbos as Chassidus and not Nigle, but the Rebbe knows what's going on with us. And if we will be realistic about ourselves, we will all admit, or many of us will admit, that we will in fact learn more Torah if we follow a Seder. Now I'm not saying Chas v'Shalom that the Daf Yomi should come before Limud Rambam, because that's a hero from the Rebbe, and of course Chassidim do it to be connected to the Rebbe in addition to all the other things. But if a person has the time and wants to learn Daf Yomi, and the alternative is not to learn, or to learn much less, I think it's foolish and wrong to discourage a person from joining such a shir.